But ladies and gentlemen, there is a force within each of us, a power waiting to be unleashed, a potential yearning to be realized. Yet too often we find ourselves held back not by external circumstances, not by the challenges before us, but by the limits we choose to accept. These limits are not walls built by fate, they are barriers of our own making, shaped by fear, doubt, and hesitation. History is filled with stories of individuals who refused to be defined by the limits imposed upon them. They were not necessarily the strongest, the wealthiest, or the most privileged, but they shared one common trait. They refused to accept that something was impossible. They saw obstacles not as stop signs, but as stepping stones. Where others saw closed doors, they saw opportunities to carve new paths. The human mind is powerful, but it can be both our greatest ally and our biggest enemy. When we tell ourselves that something cannot be done, we close the door to possibility before even trying. When we convince ourselves that we are not good enough, smart enough, or talented enough, we surrender to imaginary chains. But what happens when we challenge these thoughts? What happens when we push past the discomfort, the fear, and the uncertainty? That is when growth begins. That is when true transformation takes place. Every achievement, every breakthrough, every revolution in history was made possible because someone dared to believe that the limits in front of them were not real. The greatest discoveries, the boldest inventions, the most inspiring acts of courage, all emerged from minds that refused to be confined. In our own lives, we encounter moments where doubt creeps in, where failure whispers that we should give up. But those moments are not signs to stop, they are invitations to push harder. Every setback carries a lesson. Every failure contains wisdom. And every limit we break expands the realm of what is possible. The only limits that exist are the ones we choose to accept. The only barriers that stand in our way are the ones we refuse to challenge. If we dare to dream beyond them, if we have the courage to take that first step and then another and another, there is no telling how far we can go. So let us not be prisoners of self-imposed boundaries. Let us rise. Let us push. Let us break every limit that tries to hold us back, because on the other side of those limits lies the extraordinary. The biggest obstacles we face in life are often the ones we create ourselves. It is not the external circumstances, the lack of resources, or the opinions of others that truly hold us back. It is the limitations we accept as truth. These limits take shape in the form of self-doubt, fear of failure, and hesitation to step into the unknown. When we convince ourselves that something is beyond our reach, we stop trying before we even begin. The mind is powerful, and whatever we feed it becomes our reality. If we constantly tell ourselves that we are not good enough, that we lack the skills or intelligence to succeed, we start to believe it. But when we shift our perspective and challenge these thoughts, we begin to see that many of these limitations are illusions. They are not walls that cannot be broken, but mental barriers we have chosen to accept. Every person who has achieved greatness has faced doubts, both from within and from others. The difference is that they refused to let those doubts define their actions. They saw limitations not as stop signs, but as challenges to overcome. When we start recognizing that our biggest restrictions come from within, we take the first step toward breaking free. The key is to stop asking whether something is possible and start asking what it takes to make it happen. Throughout history, the greatest achievements, breakthroughs, and transformations have come from individuals who refused to accept the limits imposed upon them. They were not necessarily the strongest, the most privileged, or the most talented, but they shared one defining trait: the belief that barriers exist only to be broken. The world we live in today, with its advancements in science, technology, medicine, and human rights, is shaped by those who defied expectations and proved that limitations are nothing more than challenges waiting to be overcome. Consider the pioneers of flight. For centuries, humans believed that flying was impossible, that the laws of nature would never allow people to take to the skies like birds. Yet the Wright brothers refused to accept this as truth. Despite skepticism, failures, and repeated setbacks, they persisted. Their refusal to acknowledge the so-called impossible led to the first successful powered flight, changing the course of human transportation forever. Their story is a testament to the power of challenging perceived limits. Similarly, think of the groundbreaking scientists, inventors, and visionaries who have redefined what humanity can achieve. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before successfully creating the electric light bulb. Yet he never viewed failure as an endpoint, only as a step toward success. Marie Curie, despite facing opposition in a male-dominated field, went on to make revolutionary discoveries in radioactivity, proving that perseverance and belief in one's abilities can break through any barrier. These individuals were not born with a certainty of success. They simply refused to let the world's definitions of possibility dictate their future. The same principle applies beyond science and invention. History is filled with leaders and activists who have reshaped society by challenging limits imposed by discrimination, injustice, and oppression. Martin Luther King Jr. fought against racial segregation despite overwhelming resistance, proving that change happens only when people dare to stand against the constraints imposed by others. Malala Yousafzai, despite facing violence and opposition, continues to fight for girls' education, demonstrating that no threat is strong enough to silence the pursuit of justice. These stories prove that the greatest leaps forward happen when people reject the idea that they must remain within the boundaries set by society, tradition, or even their own self-doubt. The limits placed on us are not permanent. They exist only until someone has the courage to challenge them. Every great achievement in history serves as a reminder that as long as we refuse to accept limitations, we can redefine what is possible. What we believe about ourselves shapes the reality we live in. Our mindset determines how we approach challenges, setbacks, and opportunities. A person who believes they are capable will push forward despite difficulties, while someone who doubts their abilities may give up before even trying. This is why our thoughts are so powerful. They either build the foundation for success or create invisible barriers that keep us from reaching our full potential. The difference between those who succeed and those who remain stuck is often not talent, intelligence, or resources, but the way they think. A fixed mindset sees failure as proof of inadequacy, while a growth mindset views failure as part of the learning process. When we believe we can improve, adapt, and develop new skills, we open ourselves to endless possibilities. But if we convince ourselves that we are not good enough, we never take the risks necessary for growth. The truth is that most limitations are not real. They are perceptions formed by past experiences, societal expectations, or fear of failure. Once we recognize this, we can begin to challenge and change them. Throughout history, the greatest innovators, leaders, and creators were not necessarily the most naturally gifted individuals, but they believed in their ability to grow. Thomas Edison famously said he had not failed, but rather found thousands of ways that did not work. His success in inventing the light bulb came not from avoiding failure, but from embracing it as part of the process. Similarly, Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, was once cut from his high school team. Instead of seeing this as a sign that he wasn't talented enough, he used it as motivation to improve, proving that belief in oneself is often the most important factor in success. This lesson applies to everyone, regardless of profession or background. Whether it's a student struggling with a subject, an entrepreneur facing setbacks, or an artist afraid of criticism, the way they perceive challenges determines their outcome. Those who see difficulties as proof that they should quit will never move forward, while those who see them as opportunities to grow will eventually break through. Changing our mindset is not easy, but it is possible. It starts with being aware of the negative thoughts that hold us back and consciously replacing them with empowering beliefs. The moment we begin to see failure as a stepping stone, challenges as opportunities, and limitations as illusions, we take control of our own potential. Challenges and obstacles are often seen as barriers that prevent us from achieving our goals, but in reality, they are opportunities in disguise. Every difficulty we face has the potential to make us stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The way we perceive these challenges determines whether they hold us back or propel us forward. If we view obstacles as roadblocks, we may stop trying. However, if we see them as necessary steps toward growth, we begin to understand that every struggle carries the seeds of opportunity. History is filled with stories of people who turn their challenges into stepping stones for success. Oprah Winfrey, for example, faced a difficult childhood and many professional setbacks before becoming one of the most influential media personalities in the world. Instead of allowing her hardships to define her, she used them to build resilience, develop empathy, and fuel her drive to succeed. Similarly, Albert Einstein, one of the greatest minds in history, was once thought to be a slow learner. He was rejected from schools and faced skepticism about his abilities, yet he transformed these setbacks into motivation, proving that obstacles do not define a person, how they respond to them does. In nature, we see this principle at work. Diamonds are formed under immense pressure, and the strongest trees are those that withstand the fiercest storms. Just like in nature, our struggles shape us. The challenges we face teach us patience, discipline, and perseverance. Without adversity, we would never discover the full extent of our capabilities. It is through pushing past our limits that we grow into stronger versions of ourselves. Even in our daily lives, we encounter moments where obstacles test our determination. A failed exam, a business setback, or a personal disappointment can feel like the end of the road. However, every great achievement is built on a foundation of failures, lessons, and perseverance. Many successful entrepreneurs, athletes, and artists had to overcome numerous failures before reaching their goals. Instead of seeing failure as defeat, they used it as feedback, adjusting their approach, learning from mistakes, and continuing forward. The key to turning obstacles into opportunities is to change the way we think about them. Rather than fearing failure or difficulty, we should welcome them as part of the journey. Every challenge we overcome builds confidence, and every failure teaches us something valuable. Once we shift our perspective, we realize that the very things we once saw as limitations are in fact the steps leading us to success. What we believe about ourselves shapes the reality we live in. Our mindset determines how we approach challenges, setbacks, and opportunities. A person who believes they are capable will push forward despite difficulties, while someone who doubts their abilities may give up before even trying. This is why our thoughts are so powerful. They either build the foundation for success or create invisible barriers that keep us from reaching our full potential. The difference between those who succeed and those who remain stuck is often not talent, intelligence, or resources, but the way they think. A fixed mindset sees failure as proof of inadequacy, while a growth mindset views failure as part of the learning process. When we believe we can improve, adapt, and develop new skills, we open ourselves to endless possibilities. But if we convince ourselves that we are not good enough, we never take the risks necessary for growth. The truth is that most limitations are not real. They are perceptions formed by past experiences, societal expectations, or fear of failure. Once we recognize this, we can begin to challenge and change them. Throughout history, the greatest innovators, leaders, and creators were not necessarily the most naturally gifted individuals, but they believed in their ability to grow. Thomas Edison famously said he had not failed, but rather found thousands of ways that did not work. His success in inventing the light bulb came not from avoiding failure, but from embracing it as part of the process. Similarly, Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players of all time, was once cut from his high school team. Instead of seeing this as a sign that he wasn't talented enough, he used it as motivation to improve, proving that belief in oneself is often the most important factor in success. This lesson applies to everyone, regardless of profession or background. Whether it's a student struggling with a subject, an entrepreneur facing setbacks, or an artist afraid of criticism, the way they perceive challenges determines their outcome. Those who see difficulties as proof that they should quit will never move forward, while those who see them as opportunities to grow will eventually break through. Changing our mindset is not easy, but it is possible. It starts with being aware of the negative thoughts that hold us back and consciously replacing them with empowering beliefs. The moment we begin to see failure as a stepping stone, challenges as opportunities, and limitations as illusions, we take control of our own potential. Failure is often seen as something negative, something to be avoided at all costs. However, failure is not the end of the road. It is a crucial part of the journey to success. Every mistake, every setback, and every disappointment carries a lesson that can help us grow stronger and wiser. The difference between those who achieve greatness and those who give up lies in how they respond to failure. Those who succeed do not see failure as a sign that they are incapable. Instead, they view it as an opportunity to learn, adapt, and improve. Throughout history, some of the most successful people have failed repeatedly before reaching their goals. Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb, famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." His ability to see failure as part of the process allowed him to continue experimenting until he finally succeeded. Similarly, J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, was rejected by multiple publishers before her books became some of the best-selling novels of all time. Had she given up after the first rejection, the world would have never known her stories. In sports, failure is an essential part of improvement. Michael Jordan, considered one of the greatest basketball players in history, was cut from his high school basketball team. Instead of letting that failure define him, he used it as motivation to practice harder and prove himself. Later, he admitted, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." This mindset of learning from failure instead of fearing it is what separates champions from the rest. In everyday life, failure teaches resilience. When a business idea doesn't work out, an exam is failed, or a relationship doesn't go as planned, it can feel like a major setback. But every failure provides feedback. It shows us what needs improvement, what to avoid next time, and how to adjust our approach. Without failure, there is no growth, no innovation, and no true success. Instead of seeing failure as something to be ashamed of, we should embrace it as a valuable teacher. It provides insight, strengthens character, and builds the persistence needed to achieve great things. The key is to never let failure discourage us to the point of quitting. The most successful people in the world are not those who never failed, but those who never let failure stop them. Breaking limits is what separates ordinary achievements from extraordinary ones. The people who change the world, the ones who leave a lasting impact, are those who refuse to accept boundaries. Every time we push past what seems impossible, we open new doors not just for ourselves, but for others who follow. Greatness is not reserved for a select few. It is available to anyone willing to challenge their limits, face their fears, and take bold steps forward. History proves that progress happens when people dare to go beyond what is expected. The Wright brothers refused to believe that human flight was impossible, and now air travel connects the world. Rosa Parks refused to accept an unjust law, and her courage helped ignite a movement that changed history. Elon Musk continues to push the boundaries of space exploration and technology, proving that even the wildest dreams can become reality. Each of these individuals faced obstacles, doubt, and resistance, but they broke through because they believe limits exist only to be shattered. In our own lives, we all face moments where we feel stuck, uncertain, or overwhelmed. Maybe it's a career path that seems out of reach, a skill we think we can't master, or a goal that feels too ambitious. But the truth is, the only thing truly holding us back is the belief that we can't go further. The moment we decide to break through our own perceived limits, everything begins to change. Growth happens when we step outside our comfort zones. When we take that first step into the unknown, we prove to ourselves that we are capable of more than we imagine. With every challenge we overcome, our confidence grows and our world expands. The greatest athletes, artists, scientists, and leaders were once beginners who simply refused to give up. They kept